The New York Jets started this season about as all-in as any team could possibly be, but having logged a 2-3 record so far and already sent their head coach packing, it's not exactly going to plan. The man who has paid the price is Robert Saleh, who becomes the first Jets head coach to be relieved of their duties prior to the end of the season since 1976. But with the team just one win on Monday night away from leading the division, and with the Jets boasting one of the best defenses over the last 3 years, where did it really go wrong for Robert Saleh? Let's find out. It is not an exaggeration to say that entering the season, Robert Saleh, Joe Douglas, Nathaniel Hackett, and Aaron Rodgers were all potentially going to be gone at the end of the year if the 2024 campaign didn't go to plan. Now, with the first casualty losing their job after just 5 weeks, panic stations have clearly been reached. The question is this a franchise that is panicking under the pressure of the ultimate all-in season, or is this a stroke of genius that will bring out the best of a very talented roster? The fans will be hoping it is the latter, but they can surely be forgiven for not holding out hope after getting used to having their hearts ripped out over the years. After decades of lackluster play, Aaron Rodgers arrived as the savior in 2023, ready to lead a loaded roster to the promised land for the first time since 1968. That, of course, only lasted 4 snaps before the team was handed back over to Zach Wilson because of a torn Achilles for Rodgers. What followed was another year of horrible play, in which it felt like the Jets were wasting a Super Bowl caliber defense, and many were asking how they didn't arrange to have a better backup plan than Wilson. Now, in 2024, Rodgers has managed to stay on the field, but of course, there had to be some other drama. That drama is the firing of Robert Saleh, even though the Jets could well be back at the top of the AFC East by Monday night if they defeat the Buffalo Bills. There is no doubt that Robert Saleh has underwhelmed throughout his 4-year stint in charge of the New York Jets, which is reflected in a 20-36 win-loss record. However, given that the team is all in for this 2024 season, does firing him now really give them the best chance to achieve their goal of winning the Super Bowl? After all, Saleh is a defensive-minded coach, and his defense certainly isn't the problem. The reason that the New York Jets have suffered an underwhelming start to the season is because of the Aaron Rodgers-led offense, which is averaging just 18.6 points per game and is only a couple of weeks removed from putting up just 9 points in a loss to the Denver Broncos. This is probably a good time to point out that the team's 2 superstar young offensive playmakers, Breece Hall and Garrett Wilson, both appear to be stuck in the mud after delivering much better performances with Zach Wilson at the helm in 2023. There is no doubt at all that Rodgers is a better quarterback than Wilson, but it is notable that the team's offensive issues don't appear to have been solved with the 4-time MVP winner taking over. In fact, their 93 points so far in 2024 exactly match what the team achieved after 5 weeks with Wilson in 2023. Now, while the offense has been struggling, the Jets defense has stayed strong, giving up the 5th fewest points in the NFL among teams that have played in all 5 weeks so far. That total of 85 points conceded works out at 17 points per game, which is very strong. Add in the fact that New York is pressuring the quarterback on 29.9% of dropbacks, which is the 5th most in the NFL, and they have produced the 4th most sacks with 18, and you have a unit that is still performing as one of the very best in the NFL. With that in mind, some improvements from Aaron Rodgers and Nathaniel Hackett is what is actually needed to make this team seemingly unstoppable. If they can come up with better game plans on offense and Rodgers can stop throwing interceptions in key moments, they might win against the Bills on Monday and be leading the division. That doesn't sound like a typical situation where you would fire a head coach, particularly considering the Jets are all in on a Super Bowl this year. So let's take a quick look at what may have factored into Woody Johnson's decision to get rid of poor Robert Saleh. From a results perspective, a record of 20-36 is obviously nothing to be too impressed about over 3.5 years. During that time, Saleh's defense had been elite, but the offense has ranked bottom 10 in both yards and points every single year. Obviously, a big factor in that being the case was the general manager whiffing on Zach Wilson with the 2nd overall pick of the 2021 NFL Draft. Wilson was hideous under center for the Jets, passing for more interceptions than touchdowns in 2 of his 3 years with the team, while completing just 57% of his passes for 6,293 yards. It was very difficult to win games with Wilson under center, and with him playing in 34 of them between 2021 and 2023, the win-loss record was always going to take a hit. One thing that Saleh was in control of during that period, other than the defense, was the messaging surrounding the team, which he never quite managed to get right. Despite watching Wilson consistently hold the team back during the 2023 season, Robert Saleh's press conferences would often remain positive and upbeat. Fans had to watch Wilson consistently missing open receivers and walking into sacks, completely handicapping the offensive output, only to hear Saleh talk his quarterback up at the podium after the game. Of course, the head coach has to support his guy, but when that quarterback is actively harming the team's chances of winning, it is negligent to ignore the issue and to not hold them to account. The issue of messaging and holding players to account filtered through the 2024 season as well, appearing to contribute to the apparent lingering frustrations between Saleh and Rodgers. After a sloppy Week 4 loss to Denver, in which the offensive line committed 5 false start penalties, Robert Saleh told reporters that perhaps the team would have to look at dialing back the cadence, which Rodgers didn't appear to agree with at all. In his own press conference, Rodgers alluded to the importance of simply holding these players to account, rather than removing what is actually quite an important part of the offense. Saleh played down his comments later in the week, but this was another example of him not getting the situation and saying the wrong thing. The Aaron Rodgers hard count has been an incredibly useful tool throughout his entire Hall of Fame career, and Saleh's initial instinct to remove it rather than hold his players to account perhaps gives insight into his limitations as a head coach. Robert Saleh has also made other headlines for the wrong reasons over his tenure as head coach, thanks to some in-game blunders when it comes to clock management. In 2022, the Jets needed a win to keep their playoff hopes alive. They were down by 3 points and only had 1 minute and 49 seconds to get back in the game. But with possession of the ball and 3 timeouts in Saleh's pocket, keeping the season alive was very much on the cards. However, Saleh declined to use a timeout after a sack on the very first play of the drive, and again after a long third down completion shortly after. More inexplicable decisions were made over the remainder of the drive, and the Jets eventually had to settle for a 58-yard field goal with 1 second left on the clock and 1 timeout going unused. The kick was missed, the Jets' playoffs were over, and Saleh went home with 1 unused timeout in his pocket. He admitted in the post-game press conference that they could have taken one earlier on the drive, which would have alleviated some pressure and preserved crucial seconds needed to get a shorter kick. The season was on the line, and Robert Saleh came up short. Saleh then had to admit one more clock management mistake against Denver in 2023 when Zach Wilson fired the ball short of the sticks and inbounds with just 15 seconds left in the first half and no timeouts remaining. The Jets couldn't get the ball spiked in time, and they missed out on what could have been a crucial 3 points. As it turns out, they went on to win the game, but Saleh admitted that the pass from Wilson needed to go into the end zone or out of bounds. He took the blame and said, "I'll put it on me to make sure our messaging is correct in that situation." One of the biggest problems for Saleh in 2024 is that in addition to his own reputation for making in-game blunders, his Jets players have been gaining a reputation for making blunders as well, in the form of penalties. The loss to Denver, which triggered the cadence drama between Saleh and Rodgers, also produced a whopping 15 penalties, of which 13 were accepted for 90 yards. These contributed greatly to the Jets' overall tally of 39 penalties accepted against them on the season, which is the 7th most in the NFL. This tells the story of an undisciplined team that cannot get out of its own way, leading to the frustrating performances and 2-3 record. All in all, it has been a sloppy year for the Jets so far, which is not what you want when your team is in the ultimate all-in mode. That is clearly what the Jets owner Woody Johnson was thinking. In his statement announcing the firing, he said, "We are not where we should be given our expectations, and I believe now is the best time for us to move in a different direction." When you consider that the team had made little improvement over Saleh's 3 years in charge, aside from on defense, and that many believed he should have been fired after the 2023 season, you could argue that this drastic move is not a surprise. However, the timing of it, with the team sitting on a 2-3 record, 1 game out of the division lead, and with a still fearsome defense, does at least make it a bit of a shock. The man tasked with piloting the ship in Saleh's absence is Jeff Ulbrich, who has been the defensive coordinator of the Jets since 2021. Ulbrich is a very well-respected defensive mind who also deserves credit for the Jets' defensive dominance over the last 3 years. Woody Johnson will be hoping that he can light a fire under his team as interim head coach in the same way Antonio Pierce did for Las Vegas last year. But it is also worth considering whether the departure of Saleh and the added responsibility given to Ulbrich could actually negatively impact the team's best unit. The argument against firing Saleh is largely based on the fact that the offense has been the problem in 2024, while Saleh's strength the defense, has been lights out ever since he took over the team. Despite offering next to nothing on offense, the Jets defense gave up the 3rd fewest yards in 2023 and the 5th fewest yards in 2022. According to For the Numbers, the Jets had the 3rd best overall defensive DVOA in 2023 and the 6th best in 2022. The reality is that Saleh inherited one of the worst defensive units in the NFL and turned them into consistently one of the very best. Unfortunately for Saleh, that is just about all he has going for him. And yes, a league-leading defense is incredibly important to a Super Bowl bid, but his deficiencies in managing the team and in-game situations ultimately proved to be his downfall. Woody Johnson's statement hinted that Jeff Ulbrich would be the interim head coach for the remainder of the season, and perhaps he can rally the troops and bring out the best in them en route to a Super Bowl. Certainly, given that he has been the defensive coordinator for the last 3 years, the team will be hoping for some continuity there. And with a potential trade for Davante Adams fueling the rumor mill, perhaps that is where the Jets will find the offensive improvements they need. However, you should never rest on your laurels when it comes to teams that are truly all in. Is Woody Johnson really going to leave this team in the hands of an interim head coach, or has he secretly lined up a move for the great Bill Belichick? Now that would truly break the internet. So what do you make of everything that's gone on this week? And do you think that Johnson has someone lined up to take over the New York Jets and lead them to a Super Bowl? Let us know in the comments.